Everybody. So today's topic is we're gonna look at fractions and decimals and look at the relationship between those two. So anytime you're talking about fractions and decimals, you're gonna say, well, what am I defining one as? What am I calling one? And so we're gonna take each square here. And so one square we're gonna call one. And so if we're gonna take one thing and we're going to split it into smaller pieces, then we can write it in terms of fractions. So here, for example, if we look at the purple one, we're going to call this one of the shaded piece, one of two. Okay, because the purple is one of the two pieces that we've taken and split that shape into. If we look at the yellow square, we've split that into 4 pieces. So I can talk about this yellow piece here as one of 4 pieces. Okay, and then the next the next square, now we've split it into 8 pieces. So we would call this one of 8 pieces. Okay, but there's 2 of them. So this one here is also one of 8 pieces. And we can write that then as 2 of 8 pieces, which can also be, if we look at that shape and we look at that, oops, it got rid of my 8. I'll put that back in there. So if we look at that shape, though, we can also view it as split into 4. And if we viewed it as split into 4, then we could say it is also one of 4 pieces. Okay, so 2 of 8 we can see is also equal to 1 of 4. So when we're dealing with fractions, there are often multiple ways that we can write things. So we need to keep that in mind. Now, if we look at this square here, I have split it into 16 pieces. There's 4 across and 4 down, so 4 groups of 4. So I can say that this shape is split into 16 pieces and 8 of them are shaded in. Okay, now that is, if I took all of those dark purple pieces and I pushed them all over to the side, I can see if I move those little squares with my mind and push them all over to the left there, that would cover one half of the square. So 8/16 is equal to half of the square as far as what's visually shaded in. So then in this square, we've split it differently. We split it into 10 parts. So I can write that as one of 10. Oh, I lost my line. Sorry. 1 of 10. Now, I can also choose to write that as a decimal. Okay, which we would have seen a bit of that before. Okay, so I can write that as 1/10. I can write 1/10 as either a fraction or as a decimal. That's sort of what we're going to be focusing a bit more on today. Now, another way I could do it is I could take that same square and instead of dividing it into 16 or 10, I'm going to divide it into 100. So that I could write as, and how many are shaded in? Well, I can see that top bar there is shaded in, so I know that a full row is 10. So that's going to be 10, and then there's 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So in total, I can see, and you're always going to write it in terms of the smallest size. So my smallest and I'm going to call it denomination. So my smallest piece is 100th. Okay, because I've taken my square and I've split it into 100 pieces. So each little green square represents 1/100th, and I have 15 of those hundredths. So I would write 1500 as my fraction, which is equal to, in decimal form, that same image is 15 hundredths. Okay. Now we take that same idea, and like we've been doing all year, we've been doing the fusion machine. And let's say, once again, we define 1 as that square. Okay, so 1 is that square, and if I was to take that square and explode it back or divide by 10, I would get 10 strips, okay, or 10 rods. And if I took one of those rods and divided it by 10, so exploded it back, then I would be left with hundredths. So a little smaller square, just like we did in the last image. So hundredths would be broken down into hundredths. So let's say I was given this as a image in my fusion machine. This is what was in my fusion machine. Then I could write that as 52 hundredths, or 0.52. Okay, and if I wanted to go write that as a fraction, I would write it as 52 hundredths. Okay, when you're writing it in fraction form, you're always going to take the smallest sized object, which in this case is hundredth, and that's going to be on the bottom. Okay, so your task today is you're going to be given something like this kind of image, and you're going to be asked to shade it in so that you're either going to be given a decimal or you're going to be given a fraction, and you have to build the image for it. Now you can build it using either the one that's split into strips of 10, or you're going to use the one split into squares of hundredths. In this case, I couldn't use the strips of 10 because of that 2 hundredths that's there, and I wouldn't be able to represent that very accurately. So I'm going to pick this image here. Whoops, wow, that was a really awful line. Let me try that again. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so I'm gonna really try and go in a straight line, which is very hard with this tool. All right, so I am going to make, and I'm doing a very bad job, but so 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 52. Okay, so I'm going to build my image, and then I'm going to write what that would be written as in terms of a fraction form. So it would be, whoops, 52, this mouse, my mouse is causing me problems. 52 hundredths would be my fraction. And my decimal is going to be just exactly what's there, 5.5. 52 hundredths. Okay, so just like that. And if you can reduce it into something, so let's say, for example, this question didn't have the 2's here. So I'm going to take these 2 little guys here. So let's take those 2 little guys out. Let's say this was just the image that you were asked for. So let's say it was 0.5 that you were asked to represent. Then you could, in fraction form, write 1 of 2, right? Because it would be half of the square that is shown, okay? So make sure you write it in as simplest form as you can whenever you're going to do the questions. And I'll maybe try and do a really short video on some examples. But yeah, so good luck and bye for now. Oops.